is Ania Wielgopolan. I work in Institute of Geophysics, Polish Academy of Sciences, and today's meeting is going to be hopefully nice, light-spirited and fun. No quiz today, just a bunch of curiosities, but I hope you will have fun for about 45 minutes, probably. Let's start from a very, very different, non-scientific, but rather tabloid perspective. Have you ever heard of cryptozoology? As usual, you can ask questions and give answers on chat. So, just not to make it too long, what is cryptozoology? It's a self-proclaimed, not very scientific field dating back to the 1970s, which deals with so-called cryptids, animals which are not recognized by science because of lack of reliable scientific evidence that they even exist. These animals appear in legends, in fairy tales, or even in eyewitness accounts. So, of course, in pop culture as well. And most often they're very dangerous, bloodthirsty beasts like chupacabra here on this image, which is supposed to live in South America. Here's a classic Nessie monster seen in Scotland, Loch Ness Lake. In fact, now it's a tourist attraction, kind of a local product. Or kraken, a legendary marine creature. You can see here. It's of course not a photo, but a picture. And probably the source of legend of kraken is the encounter with giant squid. A separate group of those cryptids are hominids, like Bigfoot, like Yeti, so-called missing evolution links. So, of course, we are not that into pseudoscience. We are interested in scientific evidence, in reliable methodology, and we are quite sensitive to what we used to call photomontages, now rather results of Photoshop. And we will not be tricked by some prehistoric reptiles in lakes, chupacabras, etc. And after all, we can tell the difference between truth and fake news. Yes or no? Well, for example, what are you thinking about these pictures here on the slide? Are they true or false? Do these animals really exist? What do you say? Yes, you're right. Let's begin with this one on the left. It's not a bird, even though it may seem like a bird. It's an insect, a night butterfly called humming moth. It's a strong flyer. It's dispersing widely, can be found virtually everywhere in northern hemisphere in the summer. It not only looks but also behaves like a hummingbird. It feeds on flowers and behaves like this bird too. And okay, next, that doesn't look very nice, this one. This is an actual fish. It exists. It lives actually. It's a red-lipped batfish. It can be found in Galapagos archipelago. And the last but not least, it's also a very real animal. It's a fish, a blue parrotfish, even though it looks like a character straight from Finding Nemo. It's quite unusual, not only because of how it looks like, but also it produces poo with colorful sand, because it nourishes with pollen that grows on corals. It grazes on it with its sharp teeth, and this is how it produces colorful poo with colorful sand. And why am I telling you this? To show you that biosphere is that animal kingdom is very rich, very diverse, and more diverse and more unknown than we could even imagine. Not only in the Arctic, but everywhere. Biosphere, that means where living organisms appear, occurs within lithosphere, atmosphere, hydrosphere. It reaches the largest ocean depth. In the atmosphere, it goes up to 2 kilometers. Even at the height of dozens of kilometers, there are a few bacteria also left. So the biosphere enters only the lithosphere subsurface, so not that deep, rocks, cracks, and caves. So animal diversity is much larger, as you can see here, than plant diversity. There are currently about 1.5 million known animal species. Well, 1 million of them are insects, but it is estimated, however, that on our planet there may be between 5 to 30 million species of animals, and as you can see here, only 300,000 known plant species. And why is that? Well, probably because animals are less dependent on light than plants. Plants can only cannot go that deep into the hydrosphere, into oceans, for example, because they're dependent on light and need it to photosynthesize to produce food to survive. And for animals, it's not the case. This is how they can be found even in the biggest depths in the ocean. And once again, why do we talk about this? We need to realize how diverse the animal kingdom is. And heading to the Arctic, we also need to realize that the Arctic is primarily a very huge area. It is about 26 million square kilometers, and also is very diverse, also from point of view of biodiversity of animal kingdom. Even though it is ice-covered, surrounded by non-forested land areas with frozen ground, it is very, very rich with flora and fauna, with birds, terrestrial animals, also with human societies. So we need to know that the Arctic is not only polar bear. Of course, it is the king of the Arctic, the first association with the Arctic, undisputed carnivore, the biggest carnivore, etc. But it's not only that, and I would like to present you some of the animals that are extraordinary, that live in the area. They're extraordinary in respect, in terms of construction, of their behavior, of their habits, of how they look like. The creatures that have almost a fairy tale appearance, but they're still very much true. And where can we find them? Of course, in the Arctic. So let's start with a very colorful one. It's a bird. It's called Puffin in English. In Latin, it's Patercula arctica, which is translated as Arctic monk. It is also known as sea parrot, Arctic clown. It's a symbol of Iceland. This is why I put the flag here. And no wonder it's a symbol of Iceland, because 60% of the population breeds exclusively on this island. When you look at the photo, it doesn't seem to match the cold climate of North. It looks more like a colorful tropical parrot. And this is maybe where the name one of the names comes from. And also, as for the other name, Arctic monk, it comes probably from the plumage that is black and white and resembles the monk clothes. And it is also known as sea snowman, etc., etc. And Arctic clown probably because of those funny orange legs. This bird occurs, as you can see here on this map, on the North Atlantic coast of North America, of Greenland, Iceland, of course, but also Denmark, Ireland. In France, for example, it can be found on the coast of Breton, and a number of migratory populations can be even met in the western part of Mediterranean Sea, so quite far away in the south. what is so special about Puffin, except for being a symbol of Iceland, except for being so beautiful and colorful? First of all, it's a fabulous flyer. It flies, even though it's really tiny because it weighs like a half of a Coke soda can. It flies very, very fast. Also, it's an extraordinary diver. It means it can spend up to 2 minutes underwater using its wings as paddles. About its habits, near the sea, it's a lonely bird. It's a loner, but in the breeding season, puffins return to the colony, most often the one in which they were born. They were hatched actually, and in one colony there can be up to several thousand individuals. So it's quite crowded. This very characteristic colorful beak is that colorful only during breeding season. Then it fades a little bit, and but it's not only the color that is extraordinary, but also its shape, and it's very important for the way puffin hunts, because it has edges that allow high efficiency in fishing. As you can see here, puffin is holding several fish at the same time. It catches fish, holds in its beak, but keeps fishing, and it is very important and quite extraordinary that in one hunt puffin can bring up to 30-50 fish caught, even though it's that tiny. And the known record is 83 eels caught at the same time and brought in a beak. So this is because of the edges of beak, but also there is an extra bone in the jaw, and it prevents the loss of prey. So this is one of the adjustments to way of life. So also puffins spend a lot of time taking care of their feathers. They have oily substance, oily secretion that they produce, and that it helps to keep the feathers clean and also waterproof, which is this kind of protection is very important for a water bird. The female produces only one egg, and this egg looks exactly like this. And parents take care of it together, and couples are long term. And chicks leave their nest after 6 weeks, and when parents at first feed them for about 40 days, they bring those fishes, and then they just leave them alone, and they need to decide to jump to the water and feed by themselves, collecting fish. And what you can see here is not a black and white photo. It's actually a normal, colorful photo of a young puffin, which doesn't have this colorful beak or legs. So it resembles very much its cousin, little oak. But with age, puffins become more colorful and look like this. And also, puffins by the northern people are considered to be ghosts of sailors and fishermen who died at sea. I'd like to present you the call of puffin. Okay, so it was a puffin in its burrow, in its nest, and makes this kind of low sound. So for a moment, from this very colorful one, let's go to a very completely different group of organisms, a bit of a contrast. Here are icebugs or ice worms. This is not a very correct name. They are actually called Enhetriidae because they belong to Enhetriidae family. Now we're moving to Alaska, to western part of the Arctic. There, in glacial ice, live these creatures. You can observe them practically only at night. They're night animals. They're pretty tiny, up to 1 centimeter long and 1 millimeter thick, so quite tiny. But so they don't look really that nice, or don't seem very interesting. But don't judge by appearances, believe it or not. But there are scientists who spend a lot of time and a lot of their career on observation and research of those ice worms. So they, like I said, they live in glacier ice. There is plenty of them. It is estimated that there is more than 2,000 individuals in 1 square meter of glacial ice. Why are there such an interesting object of scientific research, even though they are so tiny and bland? Because they define the boundary of the glacier. Because they cannot move between glaciers, they never appear farther than a few meters from the edge of the glaciers. And sometimes under the snow, it's not that clear, not that obvious when the glacier ends. And at the same time, so when there are no more ice worms, that means that there's no more glacier. And at the same time, they're a great indicator of climate change, glacier retreat, and also a great tool for exploring mechanisms of evolution, because each population is separated in its own little world of their own glacier. But what can they eat in such environment between ice crystals? Well, they feed on bacteria and algae. What you can see here, for example, it is a watermelon snow. You can check it on in Polarpedia. It's well explained. These are special algae, also called bloody snow. So this is what they eat, and of course, to survive in such very specific and harsh environment, they need some modifications. They need some adaptation. So dark color to their nightlife is an adaptation to their nightlife. Also, their construction is very special because they're made from unique protein chains that are adapted to low temperatures. Like I said, each population is isolated because they're not capable of traveling between glaciers. And but you might imagine that they need to struggle all their life. I mean, they need to struggle with temperatures like minus 40 degrees, but it's not like that. It's not that they're going to they live in a frosty environment all the time. Because of physical properties of water first, and also because the ice is a great isolator, the temperature in the subsurface of glacier does not fall below 0 Celsius degrees. So it's also around 0 Celsius degrees, and this is the temperature they need to struggle with. But what is weird about them, that if they're exposed to a temperature higher than only 5 Celsius degrees, they melt. They would literally melt before our eyes. So, as we are in this part, western part of the Arctic, let's stay here for a while, but let's get to the animal that is much larger and much more magnificent, and also very, very dignified from its appearance. And also, what's special about this animal, which is called muskox, it is that it has changed very little since the Pleistocene era. So, its name, muskox, in Latin is Ovibos moschatus, and so the English name is derived from strong scent, strong odor, smell of musk produced by the bulls in mating season to attract females. And you might know musk from perfumes, probably. And as for Inuit name, for example, Wingmak, it means hairy fellow, and I think it's obvious why it's called like that, because of its magnificent, long, very warm and thick fur. So where does it live? Natural range is Arctic regions, North America, Alaska, Canada, Greenland. And before the glass glaciation, they also inhabited Asia, Europe, among others. And now they have been partly reintroduced in Spitsbergen, for example, and in some other regions. Also, there are people trying to domesticate them. That means to just for food, for meat, and or for their fur. And this is a tiny calf of muskox. It's quite cute. But also, if you look here, this is a comparison between size of muskox and a grown man. It seems muskox from at the first appearance seems very, very large, but it is not actually. If you look at it, it seems large because it has a very big head, very long, very thick fur, and actually our Polish bison, for example, is much larger than musk ox. Like I said, musk oxen have changed a little since Pleistocene. If you recognize, this is from Ice Age movie. But how do we know this? Because first of all, from paleological studies, but also from cave drawings. We know that they walked beside mammoths, beside hairy rhinoceros, and they looked quite the same. Why would they change their form if they're so well adapted to those strict Arctic conditions in which they live? And let's go to those adaptations shortly. So first, fur. Their fur with different shades, gray, brown, black, like sort of pessimistic rainbow. But there are also interesting white individuals. So fur consists of two layers, which are two different types of hair. Outer hair, which forms like a blanket or like a jacket hanging down and protecting against snow, against rain, against wind. It's like a coat, mainly. So this is one type of hair. This hair, those hair can be very, very long, up to a meter long, and it makes the record of the animals. And there's also the internal part, which you can see on the photo already in the form of wool. It's an undercoat. Inner hair, very, very thick, very warm. It's actually kiwiut, the lightest and the warmest wool in the world, and also very, very expensive, and that's why musk oxen are domesticated. So there's one thing, the fur, and the key to survival in such harsh cold conditions is to save energy. And this is what exactly, first of all, the fur does, protecting from cold. But also, musk oxen have developed certain behaviors, allowing them to save energy. For example, in the winter, when it's even colder, they form bigger herds, bigger groups, to protect themselves from the cold, from the wind, and also they have developed a sort of a immobilization strategy. What does it mean? It means that if they're attacked, they rarely run away. They stand still. But if it's a single predator, like a bear attacking them, they form a phalanx. That means they stand in line, like in here, on this photo. And when it's a group of predators attacking them, like wolves, they form a circle like that, and the young ones, the calves, are protected inside this circle. But they don't move, don't run that often, so they don't lose their very precious energy. Even though they do not run, they are able to run very, very fast, even though they're quite heavy. when the threat increases, like when they see a man, for example, a man has little chance to escape because they're so fast. Of course, they're herbivores. They're not carnivores. They wouldn't attack other animals to eat them, but just to protect themselves. So if an animal weighing like several hundred kilograms runs fast at you, that can be quite frightening, because it treats, for example, a human as an intruder. So what this animal also has is a characteristic horn, sort of horn on the forehead, which protects the skull, for example, during mating season, bullfighting. And this is a photo of this bullfighting, because they clash with their heads. So to protect them from their brains, they need to have this horn. And also it can serve to be useful to pierce the hard ice cover in search of food. And this food can be, like I said, it's a herbivore, so special delicacies, for example, a polar willow. I'd like to show you a short video. It's of course not from nature, it's from a zoo, but it shows how it behaves during mating season. They hit their heads like that. Okay, back to the presentation. And another animal is lost my ability to control presentation somehow. Yeah. So let's go to another group of animals that are lemmings. Lemmingi in Latin. Actually, it's not one group of animals. It's 30 different species, but with quite similar appearance, with quite similar behavior, and they occur practically all over the Arctic, as you can see here on the map, from Alaska to Siberia. And in the 16th century, lemmings were supposed to prove that the theory of self-feeding was true. That means that people believed that they were born from the rain and fell from the sky during the storm. And what we think of when we think of lemmings, we usually imagine giant colonies, giant herds. But in fact, most of the time they spend all alone. But like most of the animals, they gather together only during mating seasons in those large to form those large colonies. So what distinguishes them? What is so special about them? First, as you can see, they're quite colorful for a rodent. Rodent, that means type of an animal like a rat or a mouse. Usually rats or mice are gray or brown, but these ones are very, very colorful. But this feature has a meaning because first of all, because of those colors, and also because of loud screams they produce, it allows them to scare away predators, even though they're very tiny. I'm going to show you. I hope you can hear that how they trying to protect from predator, and in this case they were safe because predator was a human. So I would say they're quite brave too, for such a tiny animal. What else? What are the other adaptations to survive in the Arctic? So first, they scare away predators with sound and with color. Also, they have smaller ears than other rodents, and like smaller than mice and rats, to minimize the heat loss. Again, to minimize energy loss. So another feature is that they periodically they develop larger claws in front paws to dig through the frozen ground in search of food. And third thing is, in spite of very severe conditions in the Arctic, in the winter they do not go to sleep. They do not hibernate. They always stay active, but the food they find is not a very full of energy, but does not have a very high energetic value. So they need to eat very, very much of it. So that means that they spend 6 hours every day entirely on search of food. They live in tiny burrows like this one in the snow. They use, like, for example, in Alaska, they use kiwi, that means this musk-oxen wool, to decorate their houses, and also to make it warm, of course. And once again, the thing that we think of when we hear lemmings is mass exposure, mass appearance of large groups of lemmings, like every 3 or 4 years, like explosive increase of number of individuals in population. It is not yet entirely explained when it happens that every 3 and 4 years large numbers of lemmings appear, because it has something to do with not that harsh winter, more food in the spring, etc. But it's not yet explained. But it's quite interesting from a different point of view, because here I'd like to tell you a few words about the most widespread myth about lemmings, and also to explain why we shouldn't believe everything we read or hear or see on TV. Because in the mass culture, there is a term mass suicide with respect to lemmings. It is very common as a myth and used widely. If you talk to your parents and you talk about lemmings, they will probably say, yeah, they commit mass suicide. And this myth has appeared many centuries ago in Scandinavia, and because people were trying to explain this phenomena of changes of population, sudden change of population numbers. So this myth has a long history, but it became very popular mainly because of a movie by Disney. It was a movie from 1958. It was showing. It was called White Wilderness, and it was showing lemmings jumping to death to the sea. And this is how people believed that this was true, that they were committing mass suicide. But after 24 years, it was proved that this whole scene, the whole famous scene, was false, was falsified. And also the scene that was preceding the mass migration also was falsified. There was another movie in 1982, and Canadian TV wasn't actually a movie, it was an investigative broadcast, a program. It was focused on cruelty to animals in the entertainment industry, and that program showed that all the scenes were arranged. That first of all, it was not filmed in Norway as they claimed. It was filmed in Canadian state of Alberta, where normally there are no lemmings. So they were bought in the Hudson Bay and brought to Calgary, and so the Great Migration was a series of shots of the same animals. So there wasn't so many of them. But the most horrible thing is that in the key scene, when there was this mass suicide committed by lemmings, lemmings were not jumping to the sea, but instead they were thrown out of it, just to prove the theory. So this is why we shouldn't believe everything we hear or see, and also always verify facts. So, okay, let's stay with animals that, first of all, have a great range and also stay active, remain active all year without hibernation. This is wolverine. gulo gulo in Latin, and also known as nasty cat or hyena of the north. It is present in tundra of Europe, of Asia, of North America, so it has a very wide geographical range. It resembles like something between maybe a bear or a wolf, but in reality it's a large bardo. Probably it is the least known species of large land predators. It is known as very aggressive, very bloodthirsty. In fact, it's very, very strong, courageous, very intelligent also. There are many cases that Wolverine didn't hesitate to confront with larger, stronger predators like bear or wolf or even a group of wolves. This is a terrestrial animal, but also is a good swimmer. And like I said, it doesn't go to sleep during winter. It doesn't hibernate. Instead, functions like 4 hours of activity, 4 hours of sleep, 4 hours of activity, 4 hours of sleep. It has a very strong jaws and combined with very sharp teeth, which allows Wolverine to crush large bones and frozen meat. And why frozen meat? Because when it hunts, it sometimes keeps leftovers for later in tunnels under the snow, gathers the food supplies, and returns even after 6 months and knows where the food supplies were stocked. So, like I said, Wolverines are very, very intelligent. Also, Wolverine is why is it called hyena of the north? Because it is known for stealing food from other animals. It means that, for example, when a herd of wolves hunts a deer, Wolverine would come to prey, emit like unpleasant smell, unpleasant odor. That's why it is also called a nasty cat. And wolves would run away, and Wolverine is left with food, with dinner. So this is why it is also sometimes called skunk. And also, we should remember that the famous character from X-Men is named to this animal. Yes, it is the same Wolverine. Very ferocious, very strong, and very intelligent. So we were on the land for a little bit, so let's swim for a little bit right now. But also let's move to the fairyland. Because do you know that unicorns really, really exist? Of course, they live in the Arctic, like many extraordinary animals. And to be more precise, they live in the area shown here on this map, marked in yellow, of course, in water. This is narwhal, Monodon monoceros in Latin, and name narwhal is derived from Old Germanic word meaning corpse, dead body, because of the coloring, like blue, gray coloring, resembling a dead body in water, actually. And but the most distinctive feature of this animal, and you can see it here, is its tooth, fang. It's found in males only. Also, every 500 individuals have two such teeth, two fangs. And the fang grows from upper left jaw always. It is, here we can see a skull of animal which actually had two such teeth. The fang is spirally twisted, reaching up to 3 meters, up to 10 kilograms of weight. So it is twisted, so it's perfectly the same as in the picture depicting mythical unicorns, and it grows counterclockwise. In fact, in the past, Vikings, for example, were killing narwhals and selling their teeth as magical teeth of unicorns. So what's so special about those teeth, and why do they have them even? The teeth do not have enamel. Enamel is an outer layer of teeth in most mammals. But instead, this tooth is covered with porous substance, like a cement. It's like a membrane which is very, very sensitive to environmental factors such as salinity. So this is what narwhals probably use it for, because we do not know for sure what was the primary function of it. Was it a sensory function, or maybe it was to like a gender feature, like a tail of a peacock or lion's mane. Also, there's assumption that it can be used for echolocation too. What's interesting, other teeth in narwhals, jaws are very poorly developed, are very, very tiny, so they need to hunt in a very unusual way. They cannot filter like large whales, because of course narwhals are mammals, narwhals are whales, not very big whales, up to 1.5 ton. But the whale, this tiny whale narwhal, swims toward the victim, which is usually fish, halibut mainly. When it's near the victim, the animal begins to suck in very hard, sucks its prey into the mouth with water. Like I said, mostly halibut is its delicacy. So we stay in water, and here you can see the killer whale, Orca, the largest of dolphins. And as the map shows, this geographical range is marked in blue, so they are found in all seas, in all the oceans, in all zones, but they prefer cold waters. For example, are cold Arctic waters. They are very intelligent. They live long, up to 80 years. They live in so-called matriarchal family groups. So there's a grandmother that rules, and then there are her daughters and their daughters, and etc. And they're in those groups, there are very, very strong ties. They communicate very well. It was proven that each group has its own language. So they have very strong bonds. This is how they're able to hunt so well. Also, they communicate with. They have this very strong echolocation, so precise that they, for example, can see the skeleton of a diver that is passing by them, like X-ray. And also, this means that if one orca is pregnant, then others can see the fetus, observe how it is developing inside. So also what you should know is that killer whale, Orca, is the top predator, apex predator. You can also check this on Polarpedia. That basically it means that they have no natural enemies. Okay, a bit too fast. So, like I said, families are matriarchal, and groups like 5 to 40 individuals, and those herds usually consist of representatives of three generations. And interesting fact is that even though orcas are specialized killers, they are very good and very effective at killing seals, for example. In the wild, orcs have never ever attacked humans. If there are attempts of attack, it was a result of mistake with natural victims. So orcas quickly realized it was not their victim and became aware of this mistake and did not attack humans in nature. So we started off with a representative of birds, and we'll finish with a bird also. It's Arctic stern, Sterna paradisea in Latin. At first, you could say it's a very not a very unusual bird. It's tiny, well, medium-sized, white bird with black cap, with long tail that is deeply forked. And but what they're known for is their exceptionally long migration routes. They travel from Arctic to Antarctica, which requires 40,000 kilometers of journey of travel, and this makes them a record traveler, a record migratory bird. They are able to survive such a long journey because they're well prepared, of course, but also they hunt during the journey. They dive for fish, they dive for marine invertebrates. So every 1-3 years they nest here in the north, in the Arctic. Well, the cycle is different depending on the mating cycle. And after they finish nesting here, they travel south again. So we can quickly calculate that if Arctic tern lives up to 15 to 30 years, that during lifetime of a bird, this bird can travel up to 3 million kilometers, which means it travels 4 times a moon trip, Earth moon trip. And this is quite extraordinary. And another curiosity, the terns are a very big problem in Svalbard, near Polish polar station Hornsund, because they're protecting their nest. This is a chick of Arctic tern. They're protecting their nest, and they're quite aggressive. Then they're attacking people who are moving around, and they defend them so aggressively that predators such as polar fox are escaping very quickly. But also other birds are using them as, we'd say, bodyguards, because they're nesting next to Arctic tern nest, and they're protected by their protection. And this is what geese or ducks do. Like I said, what they eat is small fish and crustaceans, also captured during dive flight. What I can like to show you is a very last movie. These are terns attacking, actually. It is not Svalbard, but they behave like it. Yeah. So this is it basically. Of course, there are many other animals in the Arctic, in different parts of the Arctic, like gyrfalcon, ribbon seal, Arctic hare, Arctic fox, wolffish, and many others. You can read a lot about them on Polarpedia. Of course, you can choose your own very special, very favorite one and find some information about it. This is it from me for today. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm here for you. And also, if you wish, you can also you can always write an email to me.